jabbing away.
There you go.
There we go.
You're good.
Dan Siegel, who's a Dr. Dan Siegel, who's a doctor of neurobiology, talks a lot about how our mind has the ability to regulate, monitor, observe, and modify the energy flow. It has an ability to focus, ability to control where we focus. Another Oprah quote is, I don't know if you've heard her say this, she said it a lot, what we focus on expands. Okay, and that's true, because what happens is the repeated noticing of what we're experiencing and then shifting our attention to what is good and healthy really impacts our neural pathways. It really does. It really impacts the brain. And studies show that when someone becomes aware of and then names the distress, the whole limbic system calms down. That's what I'm talking about. And I know I'm kind of repeating myself, but I'm kind of saying it in many different ways. We call it name it, tame it. Name it, tame it. Like when I name my worry, it calms down. When I name my sadness, it loses its power. It's called name it, tame it. Okay. So John Kabat-Zinn says, as long as you are breathing, there is more right with you than wrong. And the power of now is enormous. Mostly we worry and plan and never realize how powerful it is to inhabit this moment. And really, if we're honest, so much of our energy is focused on the future or the past. And really, our well-being is really in the present. Listening to Ellen's energy when she was talking was so inspiring because she was so in this moment with you, celebrating with you, being with you. And that's what it's all about, being in the moment, praying. It's all about being in the moment. We're so conditioned to worry about the past or worry about the future. So, and the power of mindfulness, and one of the areas they're using this in, they're using mindfulness with eating disorders, they're using it with addictions. And the reason is that we don't want to feel that distress. If we don't want to feel our distress, we will turn to something to comfort us. And oftentimes it's alcohol I don't mean oftentimes, I'm just saying it can be alcohol or food or things that are not as healthy for us, because we don't want to feel the distress. I know for me, when I go home if I'm tired, I really want ice cream. So, and that's, I'm not going to judge myself for that, but just to be aware of the fact that whenever I experience a feeling that's distressful, we want to soothe it somehow. And when in a little bit, we're going to talk about Tara Brock, who's going to do a meditation on how to soothe ourselves, comfort ourselves. One of the ways that I think is wonderful is just to put our hands on our heart and say, there's sadness, or there's tired, there's distress. And just learning to comfort ourselves as we would someone else. Put our hand on our cheek and say, I love you, and I'm sorry that you're feeling this sadness. It seems kind of maybe weird, but it really can help us to learn to comfort ourselves. Okay? And then another leader, and then we're going to go into the tape, is Jack Kornfield. Jack Kornfield talks about the practice of mindfulness helps us to make this shift by turning in radical acceptance of what is difficult and painful. It creates this tenderness and spaciousness wherein the pain can be transformed. Okay, and he's again talks about naming it, taming it. Once we give up our resistance to what we're experiencing, whatever it is, whether it's pain, physical pain, emotional pain, disturbing thoughts, once we stop resisting those, they lose their power. And we will no longer over-identify with them, and we will see that there's a space. There's the, worry, and here I am. So, Marcia Linehan is, and Maureen, God bless her, is gonna play this, but this is a practice of observing thoughts. And I like it because, again, as we become aware of our thoughts and beliefs, we can notice if they're healthy, if they're wholesome, if they're helpful. And also we can notice if they're unhealthy or unwholesome or unhelpful. Okay? And as we experience this, we can see that there's a space here and we can make choices. We don't have to believe our thoughts. We don't have to believe our thoughts. If our thoughts are being critical of us, we don't have to believe our thoughts. And we can sort them out. And then we can make clear choices about what we want to do. Okay, so Maureen's going to play a tape. This is Marcia Linehan. And it's just a short exercise that maybe you can do.
Problems here, problems there, problems everywhere. Life just feels completely overwhelming. So this person said to me, what should I do? I have to change my whole life.
Okay, go.
I'm going to change.
Wrong one.
This mindfulness is an observing thoughts mindfulness. It's perhaps one of the most important mindfulness practices there is.
Can you hear it? Can you hear it?
Because most people, when they have thoughts that they don't want to have, that interfere with their lives or that they don't like, try to get rid of them by suppressing them. What most people don't realize is that if you try to suppress a thought, it makes the thought stronger and more likely to come back. Trying to get rid of thoughts is not an effective way to get rid of thoughts. The secret to mindfulness practice with thoughts is to simply watch them. So this is a mindfulness practice that has you just watching your thoughts. It's a little bit like observing your mind. You simply watch what goes through. You might be a person who has more going through than thoughts. You could have feelings or emotions go through, and if that happens, you can watch that too. The thing to do is to imagine in your mind's eye that your mind is moving along on a conveyor belt. It's a long conveyor belt, and you're standing at the end of the conveyor belt, and you're going to try to sort what comes through your mind. You're just going to watch it, just notice it, just sort it. There are lots of ways to sort. When I first started mindfulness, I could never get thoughts to go away. They were always in my mind. I spent most of my time thinking. Then I learned to sort my thoughts, and it made things a lot simpler. I had my philosophical thoughts, I had my theological thoughts, I had my worry thoughts, I had my thoughts about pain, I had my emotions, I had fear, I had lots of things. So I used to have little pails set up around the conveyor belt. And when thoughts and feelings and sensations came down the conveyor belt, I just watched and put them in a pail. And I just sorted them. And I did that all day, for days. So the idea is to simply stand there. Now we're going to do this sitting, but in your mind's eye, you're sitting at the end of the conveyor belt. Now what might happen is a thought comes down the conveyor belt and it's just so interesting that you get all caught up in it. That's what often happens. And then you suddenly realize that you're actually thinking about something. You're not noticing thinking about something. In other words, you get all caught up in your thoughts. When that happens, go back to noticing. And if you find a judgmental thought coming up in your mind, like you start judging yourself because you weren't watching, Then notice that, a judgmental thought went through my mind. You can put that in the judgmental thought pail. So you're just watching your mind to see what happens. And every time you catch yourself doing something else, just let go gently of whatever else you're doing, non-judgmentally, in the moment. Coming back to watching again. Just sorting what comes by. Just noticing. Watching your mind. If you don't like something, notice not liking something has arisen within me. And you can sort that into the not liking pail. Something comes by that makes you fearful, notice, fearful. You put that in a pail. Just notice, whatever it is. You may even notice, I don't want to do this. So you can notice the feeling of not wanting to do this has arisen within me. Just sort that, put it in a pail, keep going. So as you sit at the end of the conveyor belt, sit in your chair, putting your feet on the ground, straighten your back somewhat, hands in your lap, keep your eyes open, watching your mind with your eyes open. Find a place for your eyes so you don't get too distracted from watching your mind. And we're going to start with me ringing the bell 3 times. And I'll end ringing it once. And you start watching and sorting, noticing thoughts, feelings, sensations as they come and go.